He heard the sonar of two of them moving closer behind him. They were sweeping along the shoreline now. They'd be on him in a moment. He lifted his head from the water for one last look at the sky. The rocky wall of the nearby headland could not be seen properly, but he could clearly make out its outline by the absence of bright stars, where its mass blackened his view of the otherwise perfectly clear night. Then Skye realized that the headland was not quite a straight wall of rock. There was a small kink where the rock met the water, close beside him. It formed a small alcove in the rock wall at sea level, and by moving closer to it, he realized that there was a shelf of rock above the water there. Skye did not really think about what he did then. There was no time. The sound of the hunters was so close, they would pick him up with their sonar at any moment. He just leapt as best he could from the shallow water. A mad, desperate leap, contrary to every instinct in his body, up through the clear night air, and then falling down onto the unknown, unnatural, cruel harshness of the rock. His body slammed down hard onto the rocky shelf, and he had to stop himself, screaming out with pain. The shelf was small, barely enough to hold him, and he twisted sideways in the strange environment to stop himself falling back into the water, the rocks cutting painfully into his belly. Skye lay still on the rock shelf, breathing with difficulty. Below him he could see the twin streams of green luminescence of the lead hunters sweep past him and then stop as they reached the wall of the headland in apparent confusion. He guessed that a command must have been given, as he then saw the multiple trails of the other hunters start to move inwards, and the party started to comb across the small bay, hunting for him. Skye lay as still as he could, in agony. He could feel open wounds on his chest and pectoral fins oozing blood from where he had crashed onto the sharp, volcanic rock. He watched the hunters sweep back and forth across the small bay, at first methodically, then with increasing speed and agitation. He felt his skin drying out and tightening. The sharp rocks cut into his flesh, and he fought the urge to move to try to gain some relief from the pain. Blood trickled from a deeper wound in his belly where a sharp point of rock had sliced into him. He eased himself away from it a little, but the wound continued to bleed and dripped into the water below him slowly from the edge of the rock shelf. The trails of light from the hunters converged briefly, then fanned out again, each moving to an equidistant point close to the shore. There each one stopped, waiting. One was directly below Skye. He saw the large shape of the dolphin come to a stop there, and then he heard him come to the surface to breathe. He could just make out the wet skin of his back at the surface, dully reflecting the starlight. Then Skye saw another, closer wetness. The line of his own blood glistened slightly on the rock beside him. It oozed slowly to the edge of the shelf. A new droplet of blood formed there and swelled, was about to fall, directly onto the head of the hunter below. Skye watched in horror as the heavy drop of blood separated and fell away, seeming to fall so slowly towards the dark figure. But just then the large dolphin settled down to the bottom again, and the fall of the blood droplet was lost in the swirl of his descent and the gentle movement of the swell against the rock. The hunters stayed motionless for a long time, listening, waiting. Skye lay in agony. His blood continued to slowly ooze across the rock and fall. Drip, drip, drip. If the hunter came up now, he must hear it. Then there were a few glimmers of green light below him again. The hunter was moving again, slowly rising up to the surface again to breathe. Drip, drip, drip. He would surface directly under that point. Skye's own blood would betray him. Now Skye could just make out the shape of him slowly approaching the surface. He was almost there, still moving quietly, still listening for the sounds of his prey. Skye watched another drop of his blood fall exactly over the shape of the rising dolphin. Then he twisted himself, leaning all his weight towards the wound, pressing down hard against the sharp blade of the rock. He felt the sharp stone enter the wound again, and he fought against his instincts to press onto it harder, yet more deeply into himself. He thought for a moment he was going to black out with the pain. He felt the sharp rock enter deeper into the wound. The blood continued to flow past it. Then, as the stone blade spread his flesh wider and filled the cut, it slowed, almost stopped. He heard the hunter below come to the surface. A thick drop of blood slowly swelled at the edge of the shelf, directly above the waiting dolphin. Skye could see the slow line of his blood that fed the dangerous droplet. He pressed against the cruel rock in agony, and the line of blood slowed. The droplet hung, quivering slightly in the faint breeze,